Welcome to today's webinar revolving around the best practices to employ in Task Manager. My name is Timbani Mtetwa, and over the next few moments, I look forward to taking you through some good hints and tips as to what to do when using the Task Manager tool. Before going into the tool, of course, Task Manager falls as one of the solutions within the Adra platform, alongside our transaction matching tool and our balance sheet tool. But today we'll be focusing on how to implement Task Manager in a meaningful way. We'll revise things like how to look at the task structure, the types of processes that Task Manager could be used for example, payroll or even ESG reporting, and talk through how to set up some of the workflows within the solution. Taking a step back, the themes to keep in mind when thinking of Task Manager could be categorized into four key categories. One is improving visibility, both for management and the individual users. The second one is setting a standardized framework for people to operate from. The third one is ensuring that the Task Manager tool becomes the central repository for all knowledge and information that you have around your processes, moving you from tacit knowledge to implicit knowledge. And last but not least, when thinking of what types of flows to set up, ensuring that you're operating using a flexible workflow that is easy to use and easy to change. Now, without further ado, I'll take you into the Task Manager solution. And starting off with the home screen, here you can see I've got multiple tasks in progress, some tasks to approve, and if I scroll down, some upcoming tasks. But in terms of thinking of the task structure and thinking of how the benefit should lie within an organization, we could divide that into two. First thing is, from a management perspective, the key question should be, do I have good insight into what my team are doing, how they're operating, what have they completed? And from the individual's perspective, the key theme should be, if I'm thinking of taking any holidays, if I'm thinking of managing my workload, do I have those in mind where I know what type of task it is, what is the due date, and also any workflows that this individual task should fall under, be it a recurring task like budgeting and planning, or even something like US payroll, where a particular task could have or be part of a sequence of tasks. Now I'm going to dig a little deeper, and we're going to go behind the scenes into how these tasks can be viewed. And if we were to think of the typical types of tasks that you can have, they don't just fall under the standardized list of internal controls or even having a tax checklist or your typical month-end close. But in today's world, it's very easy to set up an additional section, maybe focusing on ESG or any other type of process. Because the way to think of this tool is that it should be the central repository for any process that can impact or that the finance team need to be kept informed on. So it's very important to keep it or to keep a broad mind when thinking of what type of task list I'm going to set up. Now, drilling into some of the lists, and for example, drilling into some of the entities, you can be as broad-based as you want, where you keep it high level and just have an ad hoc task, or you can be very detailed, as you see here, where I've broken down a task into several steps with several sub-steps in it. And if I were to drill into any of these tasks, you can then start to visualize how much information is in there. Now, in terms of the flexibility and setting up who does what, per task, it's very easy to set up where a task sits, who's working on it, and this could be either from an individual perspective, or you can assign a team where the first person who's available could work on it, And when thinking of those workflows, the first step is thinking, okay, I've got my preparer. Do I need any approvers? And could it be one or could it be many? And from there, it's very easy to set up that list. Now, in this example, I might set a simple workflow where I've got one simple approver, but the tool is flexible enough to deal with many different variations. Now, the other thing, coming back to the idea of this tool being your central repository for information, is when it comes to providing information, be as descriptive as possible. In the modern world that we're living in, where there's a lot of turnover in terms of staff, it's important to note that being able to plug and play users, change who's working on what task, or even onboard individuals becomes a lot easier if you've got a very good framework with descriptions of who's doing what. And you can then set up the task to be either a standalone task, or you can even set it up to be recurring, of which then you get the ability to say, when does it occur? How often does it occur? Do I want to notify people? And so without clicking through all of these options, you get to see the flexibility that you have. Now, even when at this granular level, one of the things that you can also do is add in additional extra fields so that you know, well, from the team user's perspective, whether this can be a standalone task or whether I want this to be part of a more detailed task. The way to think of it is, when thinking of the way that the dashboards work, how do I want to filter through this information? In this example, I set up a task to be a daily task so that the user would always be reminded or be kept abreast of what's happening on a daily perspective. But you can add in whatever fields that you deem to be necessary for your individual task. And then if you're a multinational, you also then get the ability to select the time zones so that you don't have tasks starting for individual team members at 2 in the morning or at inappropriate times. Now, when thinking of then these individual tasks and how you can then manipulate them, coming back to the home screen, one of the things you can do is then focus on a particular task, and it could be, for example, payroll. And in the screen here, you can see that this task has some steps before it or in that process. Now, in terms of changing these steps, it's very easy to connect other tasks which could have been set up before so that you can also then manipulate the workflows for a specific chain of tasks. Coming back to the idea of how the process is supposed to work and keeping in mind the themes, the key theme is flexibility. So you can start off with an individual task, but as you start to understand your process more, you can then start to add in steps so that the workflow and framework and structure of your team improves or becomes more organized. In this example, I already had a preceding task, but I decided that I wanted to add a succeeding task. And maybe this might be, as an example, it might impact my payroll or some of my intercompany accounts, especially since it's related to transfer pricing. And then I just add that as a succeeding task. Automatically, I know who's working on what. And then I've saved that flow. So everyone who should be involved is actually involved. And then when it comes to the way that they could work, it's very easy for them to work in an combined or organized way. This particular flow that I showed you Could also be updated via Excel templates, which are easy to upload. But the key thing is whichever way you choose to manipulate the data can be done from within the system. Now, coming back to the idea of team roles and clicking on teams, here you can see for broad-based structures in different teams, I've got different people who are working at different things. So for some, I might have a preparer, an approver, but I can also change that depending on who's doing what. And it's very easy to add teams and add members of the team based on the list of users that you currently have in your environment. Again, a simple process to set up, a simple process to change or edit, also from within the system or based on the Excel templates. And then coming back to the extra field configuration that I mentioned, it's very easy to add in extra fields, to define what type of data would be in the extra fields, and whether you want those fields to be visible. And in this instance, a good way to think of it is maybe you're going through a migration of ERP, or you've got a one-off process. Well, in that instance, you can have an extra field just until that project is done. And then at the end of it, you can then stop it from being visible or even archive that particular process. Now, all these are options that you have within the tool. And if we were to think about the purpose behind all these options, the main thing is that coming back and thinking of the users, we want management to be able to understand who's doing what within the solution, but also for the individual users to appreciate what they're currently working on, what they will be working on, and what they might need to approve from other team members, so they have a good appreciation of their workflow. Taking you to the dashboards, the idea would then be for you to be able to slice and dice that data in different ways. For example, by team, which you can see here what has been completed and what hasn't been completed, but also by user, company, department, or based on our additional fields, whether it is a daily task or whether it is any other task that you could have set up. And if you wanted to then drill down further, it's very simple to just click through that list and be presented with a list of what has been presented. And if you ever needed to look at what had been archived, you could also include the archive list. So again, good visibility within the system. So that's what I wanted to cover for today's example of how to use the Task Manager solution and some of the backdoor settings that you have in terms of improving it. So just to summarize, within the tool, it's easy to access it, easy to change information, easy to use the tool for different processes, be it your standardized month-end close, but also for more broader-based processes like your ESG, like payroll, or anything else which has a set way of operating. And last but not least, when it comes to viewing these tasks, always keep in mind the workflows that your team has, as well as the ways that you can improve the visibility and understanding of the workflows from a management perspective and from an individual user's perspective. Now, if you would like to have a more in-depth conversation around how to improve your use of this tool, feel free to contact a member of our team, and we would always be willing to set up a more in-depth meeting to go through your current use case and to explore that further. Thank you.